Why chosen ones were born into toxic families. Have you ever wondered why some of the most chosen, gifted, and destined individuals seem to be born into the most difficult and toxic family environments? It's a question that many of us have asked at some point in our lives, especially when facing trials that feel far too heavy to bear.
Sometimes, we may even find ourselves questioning God's intentions. Why would He allow someone with such a bright calling to be born into a place of pain, confusion, and dysfunction? But what if I told you that this very brokenness is where God's most powerful work is often done? What if the toxicity around you isn't there to defeat you, but to refine you for the great purpose God has planned for your life? Let me tell you,
I believe this with all my heart. God is never surprised by the circumstances we face. What may seem like a setback, a cruel twist of fate, or a lifelong struggle is often part of God's divine setup. The world may look at you, at your family's pain, at the brokenness that surrounds you, and see only defeat. But God sees something far different. He sees a diamond in the rough, a vessel that He's shaping, a life that will one day reflect His glory in ways that we can't even imagine yet. When we look at the lives of biblical heroes, Joseph, Esther, David, we see that God doesn't always choose the easy path for His most beloved. In fact, He often allows His chosen ones to be born into the hardest of situations. Joseph was thrown into a pit by his own brothers and sold into slavery. Esther was an orphan, taken from her home and forced into a pagan king's palace. David, the future king of Israel, was the youngest son in a family that overlooked him, and he spent his youth fleeing from a jealous king. These men and women didn't experience an easy, carefree life. They didn't live in perfect, loving homes. But through their struggles, through their pain, God was shaping them for something far greater. I want you to hear this today. Your toxic family environment, the challenges you face, and the heartaches that weigh you down are not your end. They are part of your story, and God is using them for your growth. You may feel alone, misunderstood, or unworthy of the calling God has placed on your life. But I promise you, just like the heroes of the Bible, you are being shaped for a purpose that is far greater than you could ever imagine. You see, sometimes the places where we feel most lost are the places where God wants to do His most powerful work. Just because you've been born into a toxic family doesn't mean you are destined for failure or hopelessness. It means God is preparing you, refining you, and equipping you with everything you need to fulfill your purpose in His kingdom. As we walk through this journey together, I want you to hold on to one truth. No matter how toxic your family, no matter how difficult your circumstances, God's calling on your life remains. The family you were born into doesn't define your destiny. God does. And He is using your trials to create in you something beautiful, a life that reflects His glory and a story that will inspire others. So let's dive deeper into this truth. Let's explore why the chosen ones are born into such challenging environments and how we can trust God's plan for our lives even when we don't understand it. You are not a mistake. You are not defined by your family's dysfunction. You are chosen, and the best is yet to come. Part 1. God's purpose in a broken family. Let's think about something for a moment. Have you ever asked yourself, why was I born into this? It's a question that comes to many of us when we look at the chaos, pain, and dysfunction we experience in our families. You see, toxic families come in all shapes and sizes. Maybe you've grown up in an environment where love felt conditional, where peace was something that could never be found, or where you were just one step away from walking on eggshells at all times. It can leave you feeling like you've been dealt a tough hand in life, like you're stuck in a place that isn't meant for you. But what if I told you that God has something much bigger in mind than you could ever have imagined? What if I told you that your family's brokenness isn't a sign that you're cursed or abandoned? On the contrary, It could very well be the very thing God is using to shape you into the person He's called you to be. You know, when we look at the Bible, we see that some of the greatest men and women of God were born into families that were far from perfect. Take Joseph, for example. He was the favored son of his father, but his brothers didn't see it that way. They were jealous of him and ended up throwing him into a pit, then selling him into slavery. He went through years of suffering, betrayal, and rejection. And yet, despite it all, God's purpose for Joseph's life was never interrupted. If anything, those hardships were part of the process that would eventually make him the second in command over all of Egypt, a position where he would be able to save not just his family, but an entire nation. It's the same for us. You might feel like the circumstances in your life are out of control, that they don't make sense, or that they're standing in the way of your future. But in reality, those challenges are often where God is doing His most powerful work. The pain you've experienced, the toxic family dynamics that have left their scars, these are not signs that God has forgotten you. In fact, they might be exactly what God is using to prepare you for something greater. We can't always understand why things happen the way they do, but we can take comfort in knowing that God sees the bigger picture. The Bible tells us in Romans 8:28 that we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Even when we don't see it, God is at work in ways we can't fully grasp. And sometimes it's the brokenness of our past that becomes the fuel for the powerful future God has in store for us. It's hard, I know. When you're in the middle of the storm, it's easy to feel like everything is falling apart. But I want you to hear this. God is with you in the storm. He doesn't leave you just because things are tough. He's there, right alongside you, shaping you into the person He's always known you could be. Even in the pain, even in the hurt, there's purpose. And you are exactly where God wants you to be for this season of your life. Part 2. The toxic family as a ground for growth. Now, let's talk about the process of growth. I know, sometimes growth sounds like a nice idea, but when we're stuck in a difficult situation, it's hard to see how any good can come from it. But let me tell you, God doesn't waste any experience. Every single part of your journey is being used to mold you, to refine you, to build something greater in you. If you've grown up in a toxic family, I bet you've learned some tough lessons. Maybe you learned how to survive in a hostile environment. Maybe you learned how to take care of yourself when no one else would. Maybe you learned how to forgive, or maybe you learned how to protect your heart from being crushed by the actions of others. And though those lessons may have been hard, they've shaped you in ways you may not even fully realize yet. The thing about toxic environments is that they often bring out the best in us, but not in the way we might expect. When everything around you feels unstable and unpredictable, you're forced to become strong. You may have had to develop a sense of resilience that other people don't have to, because life just doesn't give you a break. But that resilience is something that can serve you later on in life when you face challenges that seem even bigger than the ones you've already been through. This kind of growth is like the refining of gold. Think about it. Gold doesn't become pure and valuable just by sitting around. It has to go through fire, the heat, the pressure, the intense heat. It's what makes the gold shine. Without it, the gold would never be able to fulfill its potential. In the same way, the toxicity you've experienced may feel like the heat and pressure of the fire, but it's also what God uses to shape you into the person He needs you to be. It's easy to think that our toxic family dynamics are just roadblocks, things that are keeping us from living a full and abundant life. But in reality, they're often the very ground where God does His greatest work. You see, when life is hard, we're forced to rely on God in ways that we might never have if everything had gone smoothly. And that's the point. God is drawing you closer to Him, teaching you to depend on His strength and not your own. When everything else fails, When the people who should love and support you don't, God is still there. And it's in those moments that He builds the kind of faith that can move mountains. Don't let the challenges you've faced or the toxicity you've had to endure convince you that you're not worthy of God's love and purpose. Instead, see them as the very tools God is using to prepare you for the greater things He has in store for you. Trust that His plans for you are bigger than any family drama or dysfunction you've had to face. Your story isn't over yet, and the best chapters are still ahead. Through all of this, I want you to know one thing for sure. God sees you. He sees the pain, the heartache, and the difficulty, and He is using it all for a purpose. Just like gold in a fire, you're being refined into something beautiful, something powerful. Keep trusting in His plan, because even in the midst of the hardest seasons, He's building something in you that will shine brighter than you can imagine. Part 3, Finding Strength in God's Will. I know what it's like to feel weak, to feel like you don't have the strength to carry on. When you're surrounded by negativity, hurt, or even outright hostility, it can drain you. It's easy to look at your life and think, how can anything good come from this? But here's the truth. It's not about your strength. It's about God's strength. And in our weakest moments, He shows up in ways we could never imagine. I want you to think about something for a moment. When we face adversity, we often look for a way out. We want to escape the pain, the hurt, and the difficulty. But what if I told you that sometimes God doesn't want to take us out of the fire? He wants to walk us through it. It's in that fire, in that struggle, that He refines us, strengthens us, and teaches us to rely on Him in ways we never could if everything was easy. Think about the story of Paul, one of the most well-known apostles in the Bible. Paul went through so much: beatings, imprisonments, shipwrecks, and yet he never gave up. In fact, he considered those struggles to be opportunities to draw closer to God. He writes in 2 Corinthians 12:9, "But he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me.'" Paul's story is a powerful reminder that our weakness doesn't disqualify us from God's calling. It actually makes room for His power to shine through. If you're feeling like you don't have what it takes to keep going, that's okay. God has everything you need. And when you're at your weakest, that's when His strength can truly take over. Maybe you've been in a situation where you thought you couldn't take another step. Maybe the family dynamics were so toxic that it felt like you were carrying a weight you could never put down. But here's the thing. God doesn't want you to carry it alone. He's right there beside you, and He's equipping you with strength that goes beyond what you can see. His grace is enough for you in every moment, in every struggle, and in every difficult situation. It's not about trying to be strong on your own. It's about relying on the strength that comes from Him. And the more you lean into His will, the more you'll realize that you don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to trust that He does. Part 4. Trusting God's timing. One of the hardest things to do in life is to trust God's timing. We live in a world where everything is instant. Instant food, instant communication, instant gratification. We want what we want when we want it. But God's timing doesn't work like that. It's often slower than we expect, and it's different from our own. And yet, it's perfect. It's always perfect. When you're in a toxic family environment, you might be praying for change. You might be asking God to fix the situation, to heal your relationships, or to move you out of that difficult place. And when things don't change immediately, it can feel discouraging. You might start to wonder, is God even listening? Does He see how hard this is? The answer is yes, He sees, and He's working even when you can't see it. Take Joseph, for example. After being sold into slavery, Joseph spent years in Egypt. He was wrongly accused, thrown into prison, and forgotten by people he helped. It was easy to wonder, where is God in all this? But what Joseph didn't know at the time was that God was preparing him for something greater. Those years of hardship were not in vain. They were part of God's plan to elevate him to a place of leadership where he would be able to save his family and many others from famine. Joseph didn't know it at the time, but the painful journey he was on was leading him to his purpose. Sometimes we don't see the bigger picture in our own lives. We get frustrated with the wait. We want things to change right now. But God's plan is bigger than what we can understand. His timing is perfect, and He is working behind the scenes in ways that we often can't comprehend. Trusting God's timing means believing that He knows what's best for you, even when things don't look the way you imagined. I know it's hard to wait. Trust me, I've been there. But I want to encourage you to hang on to hope, even when it feels like nothing is changing. God is always at work, even in the moments of silence. And His timing will always be better than ours. Remember, it's in the waiting that we learn to trust. It's in the waiting that God works on our hearts, strengthening our faith and preparing us for the future He has for us. You may feel stuck right now, like you're in a season of waiting that never seems to end, but don't give up. The God who saw Joseph through years of hardship will see you through yours as well. And when His perfect timing unfolds, you'll realize that everything you went through was for a reason, and it was all part of His beautiful plan. Keep trusting, keep believing, and keep waiting, knowing that God is working on your behalf, even when you don't see it yet. Part 5, the role of faith in overcoming toxicity. Now, I want you to think about something really important. When we're in the middle of difficult situations, whether it's the pain of a toxic family, a challenging relationship, or a tough season in life, the temptation is often to rely on our own understanding. We want to figure things out on our own, to take control, to try and fix everything. But here's the truth. The more we try to fix things on our own, the more we struggle. It's like trying to swim against a current that's stronger than we are. The harder we fight, the more exhausted we become. That's where faith comes in. Faith is the key that unlocks God's power in our lives. It's the trust that God knows what He's doing, even when everything around us seems out of control. It's the belief that despite our circumstances, God has a plan that's bigger than anything we could ever see. And when we choose to walk by faith, even in the midst of toxic family dynamics, that's when God starts to move in ways that we can't explain. Let me ask you this. When you look at your family situation, do you see it through the lens of faith, or do you see it through the lens of fear and frustration? It's easy to focus on the negative, the hurt, the brokenness, the unfairness. But when we choose to look at our situation through the eyes of faith, we begin to see something different. We start to see that even in the mess, God is still at work. He's still moving, still shaping, still refining. I want to share with you a simple yet powerful truth. Your faith is stronger than your circumstances. When we choose to walk by faith, we're not ignoring the pain or pretending everything is okay. We're acknowledging the reality of our situation, but we're also choosing to trust that God is bigger than our problems. In Hebrews 11:1, it says, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see." Faith is trusting that God is already working, even when we can't see the results yet. Faith allows us to stop fighting the current. It lets us rest in the knowledge that God has a plan. It helps us to surrender our worries, fears, and frustrations to Him, knowing that He can turn things around in ways we never thought possible. When we live by faith, we stop trying to fix everything ourselves and start relying on God to make things right in His perfect time. Part 6, Healing from Toxic Family Experiences. One of the most beautiful things about God's love is that He doesn't just leave us in our brokenness. He heals us. And that healing doesn't always happen overnight. Sometimes it's a process. Sometimes it's something we have to walk through day by day, step by step. But the good news is this: God is committed to your healing.
He doesn't want you to stay stuck in the pain of your past. He wants to take that pain and turn it into something beautiful, something that brings glory to Him and healing to your heart. If you've come from a toxic family environment, you've probably experienced hurt that cuts deep. Words that hurt, actions that betray, the feeling of being unloved or unwanted. And while the past can never be changed, I want you to know that God can heal your heart. He can take those wounds and turn them into places of strength. It's not about forgetting the past, but about allowing God to redeem it. Healing starts with forgiveness. I know that's not an easy thing to hear, especially when the pain is fresh. But forgiveness is not for the person who hurt you. It's for you. It's about releasing the grip that those hurts have on your heart so that God can work in you. When we choose to forgive, we free ourselves from the burden of bitterness and anger. And that doesn't mean excusing the wrongs that were done to you. It means giving those wrongs to God, trusting Him to handle it, and choosing to move forward without letting the past control your future. Jesus showed us the ultimate example of forgiveness. On the cross, He forgave those who had hurt Him the most, those who had falsely accused Him, mocked Him, and crucified Him. And He did it out of love. His forgiveness wasn't about them. It was about Him. And it was about you. His forgiveness offers us the chance to heal, to be set free from the weight of our pain. But forgiveness is only the first step. The next step is letting God restore you. That's where healing truly begins. God doesn't just want to fix the broken pieces, He wants to make you whole again. He wants to restore the things that were stolen from you, your joy, your peace, your sense of worth. And He does that by pouring His love into you. In Psalms 147:3 it says, He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. God's love is the balm that soothes the deepest of hurts and makes us whole again. I know it can be hard to believe that healing is possible when you've been hurt for so long, but I promise you, healing is not only possible, it's promised, and God's healing power is stronger than any toxicity or pain you've experienced. When you allow Him to work in your heart, He will restore you in ways that are beyond what you could have imagined. You will become stronger, more resilient, and more capable of living the life He's called you to live. So as you walk through this journey of healing, don't rush the process. Let God take His time in your life. Trust that He's doing a deep work in you and that in His perfect time, you will experience the freedom and peace that come from truly letting go. Keep leaning on Him. Keep trusting His process and watch as He transforms your pain into purpose. Healing is possible, and it's waiting for you. Part 7. Embracing your calling. At this point, you might be wondering, what does all of this have to do with my calling? After all, you've been through so much pain, rejection, and difficulty. How could God possibly use all of that for something good? It's natural to question your worth or feel like your circumstances disqualify you from stepping into the purpose God has for you. But I want to tell you something powerful. Your calling is not defined by your past or your family's dysfunction. It's defined by God. Your past doesn't determine your future. Your family's brokenness doesn't determine your potential. The calling on your life was set before you were born, and nothing, not even the hardest of circumstances, can take that away. God has placed a unique purpose in your heart that only you can fulfill. And no matter what you've been through, that calling is still there. It may look different than you imagined, but it's still yours, and it's still worth fighting for. Take a moment to think about the story of Moses. He was born into a time when his people were oppressed and his family was in danger, but God had a purpose for Moses, even from the very beginning. He was called to deliver his people from slavery in Egypt. Now, Moses didn't exactly have the perfect start. He was raised by Pharaoh's daughter, grew up in a royal palace, and later fled after making a terrible mistake. He spent years in the desert, feeling like a failure. But when God called him to step into his purpose,
Moses hesitated. He didn't think he was qualified. He didn't think he had what it took. But God told him, "I will be with you." And that's the key. God doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called. Your calling might look different from Moses in some ways, but the truth is the same. God has a purpose for you, and He will equip you for that purpose. No matter how broken your past may be, no matter how toxic your family dynamics may have been, God's plans for you are still intact. You might not see it yet, but God is shaping you in ways you can't fully understand. Every part of your journey, every struggle, every tear, every triumph has been a part of the story that God is writing for you. I want you to hear this loud and clear. You are chosen. You are not an accident, and your life has purpose. It might not always feel that way, especially when the weight of your circumstances is heavy. But God's calling is always bigger than our struggles. Your life has meaning, and your story will be one that impacts others in ways you can't yet imagine. Don't let your circumstances define you. Embrace the calling God has placed on your life, even if it doesn't look like what you expected. Trust that He is guiding you, even through the difficult times, and that every step you take brings you closer to the purpose He has for you. Part 8. The rewards of endurance and faith. As you walk through this journey, trusting in God's plan and embracing the calling on your life, there's one thing I want you to remember: endurance. Endurance isn't just about holding on when everything is tough. It's about trusting that God is with you through every challenge and knowing that He will bring you through it. It's about staying faithful when it feels like the world is against you. It's about pressing on even when you can't see the finish line. The Bible tells us that those who endure will receive a crown of life, and that reward is not just a future promise. It's something we can experience even here on earth. James 1:12 says, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love Him." The crown of life is not just about heaven, it's about the victory we experience when we remain faithful in the midst of trials. I want you to think about this. Every trial you face, every moment you feel like you're at the end of your rope, is an opportunity for God to show His power in your life. Your faith and endurance are what will lead you to victory. It's not about how fast you run the race or how easy the path is. It's about how faithfully you walk it, one step at a time, trusting that God is right there beside you. And let me tell you, the reward isn't just something that comes at the end of your life. The reward is in the journey. It's in the moments when you look back and realize just how far you've come. It's in the strength that God gives you to keep going when you thought you couldn't. It's in the peace that comes when you surrender control and trust that God is in charge. It's in the joy that fills your heart when you see how God has used your pain for His glory. The rewards of endurance and faith are real, and they are worth every step you take, every struggle you face, and every moment you choose to trust God. So, as you continue walking through this journey of embracing your calling and enduring through the struggles, know this: the rewards are coming. They may not always look the way you expect, but they are there. God sees your faithfulness, He sees your perseverance, and He will never leave you. The crown of life is waiting for those who endure. And I believe with all my heart that you are one of those who will receive it. Keep pressing on, keep trusting God, and know that the best is yet to come. Conclusion. As we come to the end of this journey together, I want to remind you of something incredibly important. You are not alone. Whatever your past has been, whatever struggles you've faced, whatever toxic family dynamics you've endured, none of that defines who you are or what you are capable of. You are chosen. You are loved. You are called by God for a purpose that is greater than anything you could ever imagine. God does not make mistakes. He knows exactly where you are. exactly what you've been through and exactly what you need to fulfill the calling He has placed on your life. The brokenness, the pain, and the struggles you've faced are not for nothing. They are part of the story that God is writing for you. A story of redemption, transformation, and triumph. It may not always be easy, and there may be times when you wonder if it's worth it, but trust me when I say this, God is working in you, and He will bring you through this stronger, wiser, and more equipped to fulfill the amazing purpose He has for you. So, keep walking by faith. Keep trusting that God has a plan. Don't let your circumstances define your worth or your future. Let God use every part of your journey, every moment of pain, and every season of struggle to shape you into the person He's called you to be. You are His masterpiece, and He is doing something beautiful in your life, even when you can't always see it. I believe with all my heart that your best days are ahead of you. You may not have all the answers right now, but know that God's plans for you are good. Keep leaning on Him. Keep trusting in His timing. And remember, you are chosen, you are loved, and you are never, ever alone. The story God is writing for you is far from over. It's just getting started. So take a deep breath, keep your eyes on Him, and know that He is with you every step of the way. The best is yet to come.